All right, so today I wanted to talk about this article out of the Star titled Antidepressant Use Amongst Youth is Skyrocketing Across Canada. Prescribing doctors say they have little choice as teens can't wait 9 months for therapy. So, says publicly funded antidepressant prescriptions for youth have more than doubled over the past decade in the country's largest six provinces. An ongoing investigation by the Toronto Star and Investigative Journalism Bureau has found there was a 240% increase in antidepressant prescriptions for oops, people under 18 paid for by public drug plans in BC, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Quebec between 2009 and 2019. So again, um, so this is just between 2009 and 2019. So um, the thing I would point out here too is that my guess is that these numbers have continued to hockey stick, grow it out, the classic, shape of a hockey stick, right? Maybe even more over the last year. And why, or a little over a year now. And why is that? Is because we've, um, for obvious reasons, right? I'm not going to get too into it, but for obvious reasons, right? We've forced kids to stay at home. We've done, stupid online classes that, you know, I mean, let's face it. I mean, how anyone who thinks that kids are going to learn the same online as in person is insane, especially like teenagers. Like, come on, like they're going to be looking for any reason to not, pay attention. They're going to be on their phone. Like, come on, like and again, that stuff's hard to, kind of hard to police in school too, but at least it's easier. Like at home, who is there to make sure? I mean, again, people could say their parents, but most parents these days have both parents work, right? So again, this online school, I think, has played into it a lot. Not being able to see friends, family, not being able to go out and do things. I think that over the last year, again, I'm not 100% sure about this, but um, I've seen multiple articles that I've talked about that have showed that teen suicide attempts and just suicide attempts in general have gone up as a lot of times pretty drastically in the last year. So that's something to be concerned about. But again, like the big thing that people think about and want to talk about when they see, well, let's face it, a lot of people see this and they may pretend they care, but at the end of the day, they don't really care all that much, for reasons that I'll get into. But people, the good people, or the people that actually, have integrity, I would say, they see this and they say, "Oh, that's really sad. What's causing it? What can we do?" Well, um, I would say, and I don't see how anyone could debate this, is that what's causing these problems to continue to get worse is number one, usually we just ignore the problem. And number two, if we do try and address the problem, we try and address it in more of the same, right? Just give them a pill, right? Just give them a pill. Um, or we just, like I say, we just flat out ignore it. And that's what's causing it, I believe, right? And that again, the we've continuously tried to do the same thing over and over again. Has the results gotten any better? No. So again, like what is causing the anxiety and depression these days, I think? Well, it's largely that we have a society that really doesn't give a you know what about kids. Let's be kind of like how people beat around the bush and avoid the elephant in the room when it comes to these situations is beyond me. And what do I mean by that? Well, we justify child abuse, right? And again, like in that, again, a lot of people seem to think that unless you were physically beaten as a kid, then that means you weren't abused. But the data very clearly shows that emotional, verbal abuse can cause every bit as much damage as physical abuse. And not to mention too how many people think spanking is okay. Like, oh, I was spanked, so I turned out. No, come on, come on. Um, that's a different story in and of itself, but you know what I mean. Um, so again, we justify abuse. And not to mention, too, we encourage abuse, right? We know that kids who grow up in single parent house, specifically single mother households, more likely to end up in jail, more likely to end up a drug addict, more likely to have a kid when they're a teenager, not in a committed relationship. Like every single negative life outcome goes up, or, growing up in a single parent, specifically single mother household, your chances go way up. What percentage of people are talking about, yeah, we really need to do something about this single mother epidemic? And it is an epidemic, especially in the States, but even in Canada as well. Um, like again, like people just avoid that problem like the plague. And well, why do they avoid that problem? And why do they avoid the other problem? Well, it's just simply they don't want to alienate people, right? What would happen if a politician came out and said, "Yeah, we really gotta, implement some policies to reduce single parenthood"? Instantly, CBC, all the big mainstream media outlets, all the political opposition. Oh, why do you hate poor people? Why are you so sexist? Right? Like, come on, like anyone with a brain that's actually paying attention to this stuff knows that that would happen, and that's why politicians don't want to address it because they don't want to have hit pieces ran about them and be called a sexist, right? Why do people want to address child abuse? Well, because they don't want to, the kids don't vote, right? Kids don't vote. So of course the politicians don't want to address it, right? Kids aren't the ones watching the news, so of course the news isn't going to talk about it, right? So again, like what's causing these problems, it's actually fairly obvious, right? But people don't want to address it for obvious reasons that I just went into. What are some other things that are causing this stuff? Well, again, we've taken a lot now. Again, like if you're 10 years old, even if you're, a teenager, over a year of your life, that is a very large percentage of your life. If you're 10 years old, we've taken away over 10% of the, and not to mention too, the first, 3 4 years you really don't remember, right? So if you're 10 years old, we've taken away like 20 30% of these kids' lives. If you're a teenager, over 10%, 10 20%, and it's for no reason, right? It's for no reason. So again, you wonder why these people are now. Again, this is prior to the pandemic, but again, you still know what I mean, right? You still know what I mean. What are some other things that are relevant? Oh well, we're telling people that, oh, the if we don't take drastic action to address climate change, everybody's going to be dead in 10 years. And then we have like Extinction Rebellion and these absolutely insane nut jobs that are, oh, it's going to be 5 years. We want it to be 5 years, or even 2025. It's 4 years now. Um, so again, we are driving hysteria for no reason, right? There's absolutely nothing we need to be doing to address climate change. And if you do think climate change is a big issue, almost the entirety of your focus would be China and India. If Canada reduces emissions, if Canada went to net zero, it would have at most a 1% effect on global emissions. Oh, that's going to single-handedly end the climate disaster. Like, no, it isn't. It's going to be nothing. It's a drop in the bucket, right? And people say, oh, be the change you want to be. Okay, well, we've been doing this for over what, almost a decade now. We've been doing this stupid, trying to destroy our economy in a veiled attempt to reduce emissions by 0.1%. China and India are still building coal power plants left, right, and center. Right? They say, oh no, they're building wind and solar. Well, they're also building coal power plants left, right, and center. Right? The wind and solar is just a cover to throw off the scent. Right? So that's another reason. What are some other reasons? Oh well, if you're white, your answer you should have white guilt, right? You should have white guilt, and if you're a minority, well, you're oppressed, right? You're oppressed if you're a minority. So no matter who you are, you should feel bad for some reason, right? Either you're an oppressor or you're the oppressed, right? So again, like I said, this stuff just boggles my mind. Like the things that are causing this are so obvious, it's not even funny. Now, like I say, why do people not want to deal with it? Well, dealing with it would make people really uncomfortable. Criticizing single mothers would make people really uncomfortable. Calling out the climate alarmists. What happens when you call out the climate alarmists? Okay, well, CBC is going to run a hit piece about you. right? Um, Calling out child abuse. No one's going to be on your side for that one. Again, people like to pretend that they're all high and mighty and virtuous these days, but most people don't actually care. Now, it doesn't mean everyone. There's a lot of good people out there. I'm not saying that, but most people don't care, right? A lot of times it may just be that people are just that ignorant, right? A lot of people are just genuinely oblivious to reality and really just have no idea what's going on. But that isn't an excuse, right? That isn't an excuse. So again, to summarize, what's causing this is very obvious. At least it should be very obvious, if you ask me. Um, but again, no one wants to do the solutions. No one wants to do what actually needs to get done to fix these problems. I already went into why, right? So, what's going to happen going forward? I think this is only going to get worse, right? I mean, the article says here, we'll see, it's really long. I don't know if I can find it. Right here. Ontario Student um, Drug Use and Health Survey found that in 2019, 7.2% of high school students indicated they were prescribed medication for anxiety, depression, or both. So this is insane. 7.2%. Not to mention this number is probably 1 or 2% higher now. I'd be absolutely shocked if it hasn't gone up over the last since they did this. Um, but again, the other amazing thing too is that this is just the ones that have been prescribed. How many people out there that have anxiety or depression or both that aren't on anything or are self-medicating? So my guess is that the real number here is probably the amount of kids that are suffering with this stuff. It's probably 20 or 30% if you ask me. Maybe even higher, to be quite honest. Right? And like I said, this number is not going down anytime soon. And why is that? Is because we refuse to deal with the issues. The medical system's approach is let's just give them a pill, right? Just give them a pill. And again, these doctors, like I say, the doctors, they know that it's not working, right? But it's you got to do it, right? You got to do it. We can't address the real issues, and this is what's causing the problem. Every problem we face in society is because people don't want to deal with the root of the issue, right? People just don't want to deal with the root of the issue. And why is that? Is because it makes them really uncomfortable, and because a lot of people just aren't even aware of it, right? A lot of people aren't even aware of it. Again, what is the medical establishment's reason for why these problems are becoming so prevalent? And it's not something that's existed all along, right? Like it's not something that's existed all along. Something has changed over the last generation or so. What is it? Right? A lot of people say and this is another thing that I can't stand too. A lot of people, especially older people, whether it's, people in like their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, um, even 40s. Oh, it's because of the video games and the all the the phones. No, it isn't that. I think that's a complete cop out, a complete scapegoat. That may be playing into it a little bit. I'm not saying it doesn't have anything to do with it, but that's just people who don't, like I said, that's people who desperately don't want to address the real issues that are causing this stuff, right? That's people. Again, I know people that some that game all the time. It's been an insane amount of time on their phone or on screens. They're doing perfectly fine, right? And I also know people who don't actually spend that much time on that kind of stuff that are very depressed. Now again, obviously, anecdotal doesn't prove the point entirely, but you know what I mean, right? So again, that's kind of the last thing I wanted to bring up. A good thing I thought about it is blaming it on phones and game, video games. No, that's not it, right? That because um, video games have been around since what, like the 80s, 90s. Were kids growing up in those times the same as the ones right now? No, right? Like again, I think the phones and social media and that kind of stuff does play into it a little bit. but it's not to the extent that people think it is. Right? And even if you do want to blame the phones and all that kind of stuff, it's still the same people that refuse to address the issue. Right? It's still the same people that are responsible for all this stuff, right? So, um, yeah, I mean, there's other things too. Like I say, I would acknowledge that the phones and stuff play into it a little bit, but um, I would really like to see some data on that. I'd really like to see some data on that because if it is the phones and stuff that are causing it and causing the vast majority of it, all you would need to do is um, take polls, I mean, or maybe studies on kids that use their phones, a little bit and kids that use their phones a lot, right? And that personally, I think that some video games and some of that kind of stuff, I think it can help, right? Like, you know, how cool is that you can throw on a pair of headphones and play a game with a bunch of people and be able to talk to them while you're doing it in real time. Like that's so cool, right? So and here's the other thing too. Here's the other thing, and here's why I don't buy the whole phones and video games thing is that I think that a lot of kids that develop the anxiety and depression, they retreat to the phones and to the video games as a coping mechanism, right? And that when you're playing video games, it can make you feel like you're achieving something when you're really not, right? So personally, I think that it's correlation, not necessarily causation, at least a lot of the time. Like I don't think um, perfectly happy kids just play a bunch of video games and just magically become depressed and have a bunch of anxiety. I don't believe that, at least on average. I think that it tends to be in the reverse, is that people have crappy parents who either neglect them or abuse them, and they don't want to spend time around their parents, so they just play video games all the time, right? I think that that's more of a logical scenario there, right? Um, Kids aren't allowed to socialize normally, so what do? They just Snapchat, TikTok. Like, I think that that's more of what's actually doing this than what people think it is, right? But again, I could be wrong to some degree, but I don't believe for a second that those other things I brought up aren't playing a major role in this stuff. Like, there's no way you can tell people that you're responsible for these horrible things that went on in society when they're clearly not responsible, and not expect people to react badly to that. There's no way you can tell people that, oh, you're because of the climate, the earth is literally going to be destroyed within the next 5 to 10 years, and not expect negative ramifications to come from that, right? And again, we child abuse is one that isn't debatable too. Like, we know that kids who are abused end up more likely to have anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff, right? So that's not one that's even debatable. Um, and again, I think that addressing child abuse is probably, of all the things that would bring society, that would improve society the most, I think that addressing child abuse would probably be the biggest one. And the reason for that is a lot of people don't even know it, right? A lot of people think, like I said, that if you're not being physically abused, then you're not, right? So again, like I said, the phones and the video games and stuff like that, that's one that's definitely debatable. I'd like to see some more data on, but like I said, I think it's a complete scapegoat. That I don't believe for a second that that's what's doing the majority of the damage. It plays into it a little bit. It can exacerbate the problem, but it's not what's causing the problem in the first place. So, uh, and not like I said, you could play, like, you could game online in almost, I mean, the games are a little more advanced now, but 10 years ago, I remember you could do pretty much the same thing, right? And the numbers have gone up 240% since then, right? So something's clearly happened just over the last 10 years. And what I think that is the woke stuff has been ramped up to a large degree. I think that that's probably the biggest cause of that. But anyway, um, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on the other platforms if you haven't already. If you want to donate, you could do that as well. Again, I would very much appreciate whatever support I can get, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.